around it. How's that?
Tactfully.
Tactfully. That's a nice word. I like that word. That's a good word, Mike. What's going on,
Diplomatically.
guys?
Hey. Hello, everybody.
Made it.
Yeah, happy birthday, Mike. You skipped out last week because it was your what was it, your
Dude, that was just
46th
coincidence,
birthday?
homie. Yeah, no, my back was wrecked, man, after Philadelphia. That's the only reason why I missed it. So I was like laying in bed probably. No, I'm
What
lying
was
because
it, you
as
got
soon as I got
stuck in
back, I went to the
Houston?
gym. Yeah, it was just the worst, which is so brutal. Like it was literally a 38-minute flight that I needed to get from Houston to San Antonio to get my car, and costing me like another 16 hours or whatever it was. But anyway, live and learn.
And that back is still destroyed today. Getting old,
Yeah,
man.
I'm working through it. Chiropractors and going to the gym, stretching, and it ain't gonna slow me down. But just sometimes, man, when I'm sitting down for a little bit too long, I just feel it. But
You know
So we
what,
see you
though?
stand.
I think for a lot of people, listening to guys in their 20s and 30s talk about back pain, it's like listening to, billionaires talking about their stocks dipping. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, come on.
fair enough, Demetrius. Fair enough. We're trying to, yeah. I don't know, man. That's why it's all about perspective, right? That's what life's
Mm,
all about. So,
that's right.
doing my best, but complaining here and there, I guess.
Living life right, you know. Well, let's get jumped into some pool then. I guess where do we want to start? Let's start with the. I don't know. We were kind of having a discussion off air about what we think makes a good stream, and uh, I guess let's continue that debate. So, Demetrius, you had some fun feelings about this. Why don't you start it out?
Well, and I'd love to hear from people in the chat too. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. When I've always I've come around. When I grew up, it was always about two things, which was like entertainment and education. And for me, it was more about the education, the instruction. That was when I watched a show. That's what I was looking for when I watched a pool match. Was what can I learn? What can I learn? I didn't really do it to be entertained. Entertainment, though, but I'm not the audience, right? So I've kind of realized that there's also entertainment where some people like to watch it to be entertained, like it's a play or a music show. But then there's a third thing with technology these days where now there's chat rooms when people can interact with each other, and it can change it into a social experience where instead of people watching it on their own in their basement and feeling like they're by themselves, there could be like a social element as well. So in my mind, I think the best streams these days, they have some instructional quality, they have an entertaining format that's exciting and draws you in, and then there's also some room for social interaction, which transforms it from an isolated experience to a group experience. It doesn't mean that all three have to be present on every stream, but those seem like the big levers to pull, and some people are really doing it right.
Like who?
Like, well,
Well, I
it's
mean, you're describing something very specific. I kind of want to hear like the company behind what you're saying.
well, I think that Matchroom does that. Matchroom has, they have all three. They have a lot of instruction. I mean, you're watching the absolute best players in the world with good commentary, like Jeremy Jones or Carl Boyes or Alex Whaley, and then you're watching top players with good commentary. So from an instructional standpoint, you can't really get better than that. Then you've got the drama of it all, which is it's very entertaining watching it live versus watching it, and then watching, the drama. I mean, that World Championship was unlike any pool experience I've had in terms of entertainment. And then finally, as far as the social part, I mean, they got the chat room going and people are offering their ideas, their opinions, and everybody's feeding off each other. So you have a social element and a lot of energy going on. So I think that was a kind of the trifecta, the triath. I heard, by the way, I heard a one liner. It said it was on the AZ Billiards funny picture thread. They said, a shark can swim faster than me, but I can run faster than a shark. So if we had a triathlon, it would come down to the cycling. All right. Anyway, so the point is they had all three. They had all three.
We miss you, Demetrius.
Yeah, yeah. So what? Okay, that's what I think. I think those are the three levers. It doesn't mean you always have to have all three, but those are three things that make it pretty good. What do you guys think?
I think that joke was hilarious,
Yeah, you killed
but
it. I
really
think we just
bad.
end the show right there. We can't
Yeah.
we can't go any higher than that.
I should have saved it. I kind of jumped the shark. Yeah.
All right, Mike, what do you think?
I don't know. You kind of have to. I'm going to be careful with what I say but I I think that if you have if you have a good matchup, whether it's tournament or a 2-man tournament or whatever, by going and shorten on the commentary side, it really can go and make that a horrible watch for my money, to where I don't even want to watch it. And on the flip side of it, something that's maybe mediocre, but with great commentary, can really get me engaged and excited and keep my attention. I think there's certain people that do it really, really well. I think some streamers are just being cheap on getting good commentary on there. I think others are maybe living in the 80s with having some people on there. Like, I don't want to hear my grandma talk about a run out. I'm sorry, I just don't. You know, I I I don't care for that at all, and it's nothing exciting about it unless I'm watching like the Senior Open one pocket event in Houston. But if I'm a senior, then I appreciate it. But I'm not, and that's not, and I don't think that should be someone's audience, or at least who they're trying to go and get to watch. I think it's short sighted. And as much as I love watching pool, and I love watching a lot of pool, and I do, just certain times I'm just like, man, I can't fade this, and
So,
I don't
so
want to.
commentary, so commentary is really important to you. So my question is, what are some things that you think are make a great commentator? Like, is it knowing kind of being more quiet? Is it pointing things out? Is it being engaged and entertaining with the chat? And then what are some things you don't like in a commentator? I want to hear
I
your
think
opinion. 'Cause
I think some guys just have a good pulse of or a good balance of things, and certain guys just fit into certain boxes, right? Whether it's from the color side or from the technical side, some guys can go and bring in, storytelling or personal experiences, and I think there's a good feeling of it all. You brought a Matchroom, and I think you nailed it. I mean, they go and can showcase a lot of really fantastic guys. There's a couple of like these younger European players that are harder to understand, where I'm just like, maybe that might not be for him. But there's other guys where it's like they can make them superstars, like the Neils of the world, which I didn't hear until this last year. I thought Niels was fantastic. Allison and Kelly grew on me as each day went on. Whenever they were doing commentary in the booth, Albin can be a little flat doing the commentary, but he's a monster on the table. So it's like I still want to go and hear him.
I think Jason's really good, actually.
Jason,
Like,
Chris Melling does a great job of doing
and Darren,
commentary.
too.
Yeah, Darren, of course, for sure. But it's like just some of these streams, man. I'm just like, I'm out, yo. I ain't gonna go and watch this. And even if you have two great players and you short it on getting great commentary, I don't want to watch. I just don't, man.
what do you think, Nate? Yeah.
Well, so the things that I have, I tend to have like pet peeves. So one of my biggest pet peeves is when they break the balls and they're wide open, and they might have like a tricky one ball, or maybe they have a tricky transition somewhere halfway through the rack where it's like, to get from the 4 to the 5 is a little tough. And it's certainly not something that is just elementary. And the first thing out of their mouth is, well, I guess they're out this rack. Like, that offers nothing. It absolutely offers nothing to the listener. The only thing you're basically trying to do is make yourself sound really smart and call something that is immediately going to happen. And then you can point to something going wrong. Well, if they had just done this, that's the trick of the playing pool, right? I mean, you can't just look at something and being like, oh, they should have been out from the beginning. So they made this mistake right here. And that's why they really got wrong. So now you just look like you're this great, this great predictor of what's going to happen. And it just makes you sound like you have no idea what's really happening. And you don't understand the nuances of the game. Like that's like the biggest pet peeve I have. Mike,
what's wrong with having like standards, man? That's the thing that just annoys me with this. Like, have some standards and be consistent with it. If you're gonna bring in like one guy one day to do some commentary, keep that same bar, if not raise it. Don't just go and be like, well, I'm not gonna do this. I'm just gonna have whoever's around go and jump in. Like, no, man, people, it completely deflates an experience, man, like no other, And
well, I think that for a lot of people that put on these streams, the people know what they like, and so it's really easy to set up a stream the way they'd want it without thinking about who all is going to be watching and what the real priorities of their whole audience is. I think for a lot of people, they just think that having two great players and a good camera angle is going to make the show. And I think that knowing how pivotal commentary, and commentary is very controversial because a lot of people want very different things. Some people really, really like
Right.
a lot of instructional, educational stuff. Some people really want players to be more quiet or tell more stories about the players. Other people just want to, other people like interacting with the chat. Like, hey, why don't we participate and talk with the chat? Other people like it when they focus on the match more. You can't please that's the thing,
For
right?
sure,
You can't
Demetrius.
please everybody. It's really hard.
No, I agree with you.
I think really what we're talking about here is like, how do we avoid exactly what Jim's staff is saying, and like he will keep him from even watching the match. That certain commentator will, and that's really what we're starting at right here, because I'm the same way. Like the moment I hear my biggest pet peeve, or if I just know that that's the type of commentator and they're on, to be honest with you, I mean, I'll call out one person here. I really struggle to listen to some of Pool Action TV stuff, especially with the one pocket things, because I think Mike said it perfectly. I think at some point in time, I don't want to hear my grandma doing commentary, and it's, I don't care how great you were, 20 years ago. That just does nothing for me. I'm
I don't
30
know how
years
to say
old.
it where it doesn't come out disrespectfully. I'm sorry.
I don't. Honestly, I'm the one kind of throwing a name to it. So like, I'm not trying to be, disrespectful or anything like that. I'm just telling you exactly how I feel as a 30-year-old listening to
Right.
somebody that I know is 70, 80 years old or something like that behind the commentary. And
But you even
at
heard
some
like on
point in time,
AccuStats stuff before. Who was that gentleman's name?
Danny DiLiberto.
Yeah, Danny. Sometime. I mean, especially in the last few years, like where he's like not even calling the right balls.
Well, you know what, and I know that,
and then he's stubborn in his position, so like it causes conflict. But like he's obviously not even seeing the right ball. What's next in a rotation game?
Well, and I know that Pat Fleming and Danny DiLiberto go way back, and that I think that Danny was like grandfathered in on some stuff. I agree. Like Danny's been doing commentary for over 20 years, and I've always had trouble. Like I've always enjoyed it, like when it was Billy and Grady or things like that. I get excited with Nick Varner, but then when Danny got behind the mic, I was like, whenever they publish a video, I followed AccuStats. Pat Fleming's publishing videos on YouTube, and I always see them. And if it's Danny commentating, I'm like, yeah. Now I'm not trying to bus drive the guy, because everybody has their own opinions on what they like and don't like, and I respect the heck out of him for what he's contributed to the game. But for me, he's not a good fit. And so I guess that proves the point of how important it is to find a good commentator you like.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that we're just talking about our own personal opinions, and of course, everybody. Some people hate JJ, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, Demetrius. I mean, different strokes for different folks, right? And everyone's got their own preference, and there's a lot of people who can't stand the stuff I say. I mean, it don't bother me none, And but it's, I don't know, man. It can just be a little rough, and if we're just gonna go and talk about it, then.
And I think the takeaway for people that are doing streams, because there's a lot of people that are doing streams that may not be national or international level, but they've got their own channel, they've got their own stuff they're putting out there on Facebook. And so what I would say is, a couple things is understand, number one, commentary is a big deal for a lot of people to get the right commentator and make it a priority. And number two, don't just go with what you'd like, because I know, for example, for me, I've learned what I like is not going to be what most people like, because I'm very different than most people. And listen, there's nothing wrong with being a little crazy, but if you're a little crazy, you have to know that about yourself, and so that you can kind of like manage in the real world. And so people that like are really gung ho about pool to where they're going to start a stream and promote, like anybody that's like really, really over the top with pool, you have to understand you might not be your audience, and you have to kind of realize it's okay to be a little bit different. You just have to know if you're a little bit different, and you can't. Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about here is more. So I guess, what is it? The Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, like everybody well, I shouldn't say this. Everybody from Wisconsin hates him because they always end up getting the Packer game somehow miraculously. And basically everybody just sits there and complains on him and digs on him because they hate them commentating. But at the end of the day, like we're talking about like
Redskins fan too. Can't stand that combination.
Yeah,
I got buddies of mine.
Exactly. But what we're talking about really is we're talking about like people who are perfectly qualified and perfectly competent and perfectly blah, blah, blah. Everything about them and their resume screams that they are perfectly qualified to be there. You are picking on like different aspects of who they are as people and how they talk and how they interact with each other. Nobody's going to question whether or not they're qualified to be there. What we're kind of talking about here is there are people in pool that are just blatantly unqualified to commentate or to partake in, proper analysis of racks, and they're thrown behind a microphone and told to go to town on it. And like, that's my biggest problem with it is like, at the end of the day, like when we're talking about like the older people that are doing it, like that's like the Joe Buck, Troy Aikman debate. Like, sure, whatever. They're qualified. You might not like them, but blah, blah, blah.
Man,
the biggest
Joe Buck
problem
is
I
great.
have is
Y'all can
people
get
that
the hell out of here with that. Joe Buck is fantastic.
I don't have a problem with him
Yeah.
either. Honestly, I don't have a problem with it either. Like, I mean, it's almost like trendy to hate them, but like I don't.
Probably in
I
Wisconsin.
honestly don't think. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that I think honestly, like there's nobody really that I hate professional commentary.
Well,
I mean, other sports, but like really what I want to get at here is like, how can we professionalize the industry to where we're actually like talking about these little nuances that we just don't like, aspects about their character, or saying the way that they say words or whatever it is, like, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about people that are just not.
I think you got to have awareness, and you got to surround yourself with people that want to go and push you to do better, and not go and settle. Maybe you're just complacent in whatever successes that you've had, right? So because I don't see a lot of evolution lately when it comes to different streamers. It seems to be a lot of the same things over and over again, and no one's pushing the envelope or progressing, at least in my opinion.
Well, yeah, not only that, they're almost doubling down on the same
Well, people are
styles of
stubborn, man.
commentary.
People are really stubborn, and not a lot of people are open to feedback either. They take it personally. Well, maybe it's not so personal. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just an opinion, and of course, a lot of people don't handle constructive criticism all that well. In fact, I don't know too many people that actually do handle it well.
I get on tilt, too. So it's just part of it. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's why we're not trying to throw too many names out there and throw anybody under the bus. But as a generality, we thought it was valuable to have a discussion about. I guess
because we were having that conversation off air as we're coming on there, but
we were talking about what it takes to make a successful stream, and it all hinged. What's funny is we were talking about what does it take to make a successful pool stream, and then the whole 20 minutes we talked about commentary. So I guess if there's one takeaway, it's how important that really is.
But you know what? I've said this for years. The game by itself cannot go and sustain. You cannot just go and have two great players and throw camera up on top of the table, and you're gonna get people outside of pool or even that love pool to go and watch it. It's gotta be delivered in a really great way, and I think that's why I love what Matchroom's doing, because from start to finish they just deliver a great product.
Well, let me ask you this then, because I think that this is an interesting thing too. I think there was nothing to me more. When I look back at like the last 2 years, there's one thing that stands out basically above all other things that I was like, I don't care what's going on in my life. I don't care if I wake up to a heart attack. I'm not going to the hospital until I watch Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods play their challenge in golf. Like from start to finish, I was glued to my TV and I watched every single second of that. Now, I'm a huge Tiger Woods fan. I've loved him since I was a kid. I love watching golf. So that's a thing that's different. But part of the thing that was so exciting about that was they had Charles Barkley following him around with a microphone. They had like they had a professional TV crew to basically follow these two people around to market their gambling. And I couldn't keep my eyes off it. Now, I don't know if that was just me or if that was other people as well, but like, why couldn't we get more exciting with the way that we do these matchups? Is there some sort of way that we could actually Chad Shoulders did this for a little while with his matchups with Havoc. Like he actually had Joey on site interviewing players in between sessions, in between breaks. Why can't we do more exciting things with these matchups to, get their ideas along the way? Why does it just have to be point a camera at a table, get some sometimes par, sometimes subpar commentators out there and spruce it up a little.
It becomes more about ego in a pissing contest. Then after a while, people just don't want to go and be receptive to it, or maybe they just think they're great. I don't know.
Demetrius?
Well, I think it's funny as heck. Alex has these comments. If you pay for if you don't pay for the commentary, if you don't pay for the stream because it's free, if you give feedback, it's free. Stop being so ungrateful. But then if you pay for it, people say, well, if you don't pay for it if you don't like it. Very well played, Alex. I think that as far as
Jim likes that argument.
I think that for me, but again, I'm such a different animal because what I'm going to like is totally different than what other people are going to like because I understand like the stuff I'm looking for during a match is just not what other people are going to be looking for. It's just I'm not a good audience. The only thing I'd say is I think for me, I've seen so many matches of pool, right? I've seen so many matches of pool that for me, what about this match is going to make it special and exciting and interesting? So, like, I'll give you an example of it doesn't have to be the two best players in the world. When Oscar Dominguez played Omar El Shaheen a money set, that was I felt like that was a ton of pulse because you got Omar who just took second in the world championship and is just playing a lot of elite playing elite pool and international events, and then you got Oscar who's very 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 good who's playing on his home table on worn cloth in a gambling format, which is his strength. To see how that would interplay and how those would I felt like there was a lot of pulse to that match, whereas watching two robots run out in an exhibition again and again. It doesn't always grab me. So again, it's just one of those things where I'm just not a very good. I'm not. If you wanted to figure out what to put out there for the mainstream pool audience or for the mainstream audience outside of pool, I'm definitely not a good person to ask because I'm not your audience.
Anyway, let's move on.
Sure.
Okay, well, let's move on to the first challenge match, I guess, that happened in this most recent week. Shane versus Roberto Gomez, and it ended up Roberto Gomez beat him playing bar table 10 ball, which, I mean, I get the idea that you wanna create matchups and all this good stuff. I just don't have a lot of interest personally. I'm losing my interest in watching bar tables, especially pros playing on bar tables. It just seems almost like a gimmick at this point. Like I would never want to watch an NFL football game with a middle school sized football. I think it's just kind of gimmicky. I don't want to watch the NBA players playing with one of those tiny little basketballs that's like this big. I just want to see the pros playing on their standard regulation equipment. You want to change the pockets? Fine. You want to play on a bigger table? I still think it's almost a little gimmicky, but it's better to make things harder than to make things easier. And I watched exactly like 4 racks of this entire thing. It just doesn't draw me, and I'm not gonna torture myself and make this not fun by watching things that I don't want to watch. So Shane ends up winning the second, third set, or the third, fourth set. Roberto won the first, second, and fifth set. None of the matches or none of those individual sets were competitive. They were races of 20, and I think the closest it ever got was 6 games. Does that sound right, Mike? I think it was 20 to 14 one set. Other than that, it was basically it was 20
a lot
to
of 21-12s. I saw a few 21-12s, I think.
Yeah, basically every single set was 21 to 11 or 21 to 10 to 21 to 12. And other than that, like it just wasn't really competitive. Any of the sets. So I mean, you're losing the interest of none of the sets being close, as well as the sets, or it's being bar.
But it's got potential though. Because I like it in the sense that you're never gonna be up by 20 going to whatever. Because when you're up by 20, I'll tune in 5 hours and see where we're at. Because there ain't no way I'm gonna go and watch when you're up by 20. I'm sorry, I'm just not.
I'm with
so
you.
I do like
I
to start.
I think the race of 21 is a better option. It just happened to not matter here because nothing was close.
Well, what about I don't. First of all, I agree with a lot of this. I have trouble. It's sometimes when they're playing on really really soft equipment, even those 9-footers, like if they're playing 9-ball with a template rack and the wing ball's going in and another ball's going in and there's 7 open balls where they're just stopping their rock at medium speed and running open 7-ball runs on loose, like on softer equipment with new cloth. I can't even watch that. Like, honestly, for me, I can't even watch that. So to go to a bar table, it's really hard for me. But what about bar table 8-ball? Like, I got a chance to watch Efren play in a bar table 8-ball tournament like 3 years ago. And it was really, like, I'd never seen Efren play bar table 8-ball before. And it was like one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. It was just really, really fun to watch. And I think, so many players across the country play bar table 8-ball that bar table 8-ball is a tough game, right?
Bar table 8-ball, I love.
I mean, you can't just break and then everything goes everywhere and there's no problems. I mean, of course, some racks are like that, but if they're playing on like a normal table where there's going to be some work to do, I think it would be really cool to see the pros playing more bar table 8-ball so that, all the tens of thousands of league players can see what that looks like.
I mean, if you're gonna do any event on the bar tables, 8-ball is the only one that really makes sense to me personally. Because I think actually 8-ball. I don't think that it's necessarily easier on a bigger table, but if you play good patterns, it seems to be easier because there's just less clusters. I mean, there's a lot more cue ball running into, there's more cannons, there's more tight positionings that you play 3 rails, between balls. Bar table 8-ball, I agree. That can be pretty exciting. Do I want to see pros playing it? Less so, but I would much rather watch them play that than 10-ball or 9-ball on a bar table.
But if you saw Darren Appleton and Shane,
template.
Yeah, if you saw it, now I will agree. Like on a big table 8-ball, so like right now my table is worn cloth, gritty, dirty balls, broke, really a worn out cloth, diamond. When I play 8-ball on my table, it is very difficult. You get 2-3 clusters. It's really hard. It's just hard to play because it's hard to make the balls and then send your cue ball with accuracy around the table and breaking things open. But when you're playing on a new cloth with a template where it's like, I watched some match where I forget who even played. All I remember is there's like 21 times in a row, they float all the balls apart. There was like 21 racks in a row that were run and nobody ever had to break out a ball. And it was kind of like stupid. So, but bar table 8-ball, it's like if you watch Shane versus Darren Appleton play like best of 5 sets to 21 playing bar table 8-ball, that'd be a hell of a set, right? I'd watch that.
There's still some like compelling rivalries in pool that I think you can go and serve your need from a business standpoint of wanting to provide a stream and then still go and satisfy a fan's perspective of, I want to see 2 great players go and match up at a great game. I really do. I mean, you mentioned Darren and Shane. That would be great, man. They got a lot of history together, Darren playing 8-ball against anyone would be fantastic. Hell, even Darren and Justin Bergman would be a great bar table 8-ball matchup. I would love to go and watch that. And you can really go and spice it up, but you gotta go and promote it. And I don't mean just make a flyer and say, send me some money.
Post it to a Facebook page and make a flyer. That's not
do some interviews with the players ahead of time and kind of have some have some different players giving their predictions on how the match might play out and try to create some drama around it. But okay, so with that being said, Shane and Roberto played. Now we were kind of talking about this and trying to remember right before the stream, I was like, Mike, you were spitting fire. I'm like, what? I wanted you to save it for the stream. But maybe you were just kind of talking about how, I know what it was. We were talking about the difference between a gambling match and an exhibition match. So what was the format of the set when Shane and Roberto played? It wasn't like they were both betting, 50 grand of their own money. What was the format?
So I think it was, obviously races to 21, best of 5, but after each set, you're guaranteed 4 grand. But it's not like traditionally because where it's not like you're putting up 4 grand and I'm putting up 4 grand. And at the end of it, Roberto was a 1-set winner. So you would think, okay, maybe he won 4 grand, but no, he won 3 sets. So he wins 12,000, whereas Shane won 2 sets, he gets 8,000. So
Shane won money by losing the match. He just didn't, he won 4 grand. He would have.
If it's how I understand it, then yeah, that was the case.
So it was like an appearance type fee where they were both showing up to fight over free money. Was that kind of something like that? Maybe. Yeah,
I think so. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just players play differently under heat. They just do. Players act differently when there's a lot of money on the line, even from a first and second place in a tournament kind of standpoint. They just
Especially when
do.
you're not hurting for that money.
Yeah, and I think it had a lot of potential because Shane's coming off a world championship. We saw him go and demolish whoever it was months ago playing bar table 10 ball. Like, there's a lot of different angles you can go and promote
Whoever
that
it
matchup
was.
from.
Sky. Yeah,
Whoever it was,
yeah.
yeah. But it's like hey, let's just do a flyer and that's it. And I don't understand it. I don't get
Well,
it.
I think I've learned that lesson over the years, and so, because I like to bet on matches too. Maybe not as much as you do, Mike, but I'll tell you, I've learned that I used to just look at the matchup, but like who's playing, what's the set to, blah blah blah. But there is a big, like I've learned, there's a really big difference between Shane playing somebody a race to 100 on a big table where he's betting 40, 50 grand of his own money, versus somebody's having like an 8-man tournament. Like there was that one where he played JL Chang and it was like some 8-man tournament where it was like, heads up races to 50 and we're going to play it
Oh,
down
Right.
for
God.
8 players. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like a semi
That
exhibition.
never finished.
Yeah, they're on a free roll. Oh, did it not even finish? I forgot about that. So it's like,
Yeah.
that's
No,
the point.
there's
Is
only
like,
3 winners, I think.
it's like I don't know what it is, but there's something totally different when two guys. It's a difference between if somebody says to you, "Hey, show up, play 5 sets, I'll pay you 4 grand for every set you win." It's like you're gonna try. But if it's
Right.
like two people that are like, hey, we're gonna, I think I could beat you, and they're like, no, I think I could beat you. Here, let's put up a bunch of money and play for it. There's a different type of, like when Shaw was playing. Who did Shaw play where he had to forfeit out because what happened? Or not, he didn't
Justin
forfeit out
Bergman.
Dennis. Did he play Dennis?
Justin Bergman.
No.
Wait,
Just a few months ago when he finished. I think he lost to Dennis.
oh, you're talking about with his wife? Yeah,
My,
that was
my
that
point
was
is, it's like
kind of.
the way they were playing was like they were playing for blood, like not like they hate each other, but they were playing to win. Whereas I didn't get that. Like I didn't get the same. I didn't feel like we saw the Shane that's playing for blood there.
I've seen a lot of great
Wow.
players go and shake when there's money on the line, and I've seen a lot of guys go and rise to the occasion. Players just play differently whenever there's a lot of money, bet behind them. I mean, if you were to go and ask Shane, would he play Roberto again that same format but bet it up? What do you think Shane would say? Because I think I know the answer. It's different.
I think you could flip that. You can flip that to what would happen if Roberto was asked the same question. Do you think he'd bet it up? And I think you'd have your proper answer both ways. Because one would bet it up and one wouldn't. So, but it doesn't surprise me that Roberto wins it out of this. Because, I mean, I've said this in the past. I think the Filipinos play with a different level of urgency than American players, and that's why, the whole never bet against a Filipino. For me, that is because Filipinos play for their existence, and when somebody's playing to eat as opposed to playing to have a little spending money to buy a new pair of Jordans or something like that. The urgency is just different. When you don't have an option to lose, there's a lot less chance you're going to lose than if you have the option to, winning it or losing is whether or not you're going to buy
Roberto
yourself a
ain't
new pair
coming
of
off
kicks.
the farm, man. What are you talking about?
Well, it doesn't matter. He grew up that way.
It ain't Roberto of 25 years ago.
It doesn't matter. He grew up that way. It's easier to forget. It's a lot easier to forget something you already learned than it is to learn something you never learned. Right?
You can take the Filipino out of the Philippines, but you can't take the Philippines out of the Filipino.
Yeah, it's fair. True.
All right. So what? I mean, I got nothing else on this match. I think we talked about the commentary. We talked about stream. We talked about exhibition versus gambling. Roberto got there. Obviously, great shooting. It'll be fun to watch.
Breaking the ball is great.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see how Roberto does in tournaments here over the next year. That's it. You guys got anything else on that, or?
Nope, I didn't. Like I said, I didn't really watch a whole lot of it. So I guess let's move on to the Traviso, the EuroTour, and I don't really have a ton that I really have to that I want to say about this. Although I will say, I kind of pose this as like a generic kind of question just for fun, and who basically, if you could take from this day forward the careers of Joshua Filler or Victor Zielinski, and who do you think is going to have the better career from this day forward? I thought it was actually a real question, and Joshua Filler wins. But Victor Zielinski gets to the semifinals
again,
in his third straight EuroTour and wins 2 of the 3. I mean, you want to talk about like two players that just seem to be at the top of every single EuroTour? It's crazy.
Well, I think Filler wins it. I'll tell you what, the last couple of years, I mean, he had such a strong 2 years there where he was winning world championships, US Opens, everything in between, that it's easy to kind of feel that he cooled down a little. But even like a cool down a little Josh Filler, I mean, he final Derby City. And then he won this Euro Tour event, and he won the main Euro Tour event last fall, right? What was the one last fall where remember his opponent did the premature celebration and then missed a 9? Wasn't that like that was like the major?
No.
That was the year end. That was the major Euro Tour event last year. And so anyway, the point
European Championships when Sanjin missed the 9 ball.
Yeah.
That was the European Championships.
So he won the European Championships. He got to the finals at Derby. In my opinion, the only reason he lost that thing is because it was 14 hours of play and he was finishing at 1 a.m. But I've already talked about that. And then he just won this thing. I mean, Filler, even when he's not having I don't know that he's the hottest he's ever been, but he plays so well that he is in the group of if you had to pick 3 9-ball players or 3 or 4 9-ball players, I mean, what you'd have to pick Shane, Shaw, Filler,
Albin,
and maybe Dennis, right? Like honestly, those are like.
I think the list when you're talking about 9-ball, the list starts with Albin.
Yeah, fair enough. So, but at the same time, Shaw is it's unbelievable, and I think Filler and Shane. I mean, honestly, I don't know that Shane's at the top in my book. I think Albin and Filler and then Shaw and Shane. I mean, but it's like those are your top 4 9-ball players. Maybe I'm missing someone. My point. Well, so I guess my point is that I think that Victor is playing really, really, really well, obviously. But I think he's got to be in that category of the guys that are like, the Clenty Kachi who got to the finals, or right? Didn't Clenty take second in the Euro Tour?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Victor's more. I mean, Clenty had a year back in 2017. He got to the finals of the US Open. He won it. He beat Shaw in the finals of a couple events out in New York. Clenty was dominating. He was doing really, really well. I think Victor and he's still a major player. He's still elite. But I think Clenty's there's the super elite and then there's the elite. And I think Filler's a super elite, and I think Victor's elite. And I think that you still have to go with Filler because he, even when he's not on top of his, even when he's not at his absolute peak, Filler's top of the world. And then when there's times you watch him play sets and it's like you watch him play tournament after tournament, it's hard to understand how he ever even loses a set.
Yeah, I think I don't think that you're wrong necessarily. What I would say is all of the players that you just named are players that have massive profiles. I mean, we're talking about some of the biggest players that pool has to offer. And I think you can often get, to be honest, I think Jason Shaw made the Mosconi Cup the last 2 years because of his profile, right? Jason Shaw hadn't won all that much in the last 2 years, yet he was a no-brainer for the Mosconi Cup, and no one's going to question it because of who he is, right? You build a reputation off of kind of what you do, and I mean,
there's a lot of people who questioned it. There's a lot of people who questioned it, but Jason,
right.
Jason delivered though. He backed up that criticism with going and putting on MVP performances. Yeah. So
and Nate, the reason I was
to build the profile.
And you're right, so I was comparing him to a elite few because that was literally your question, is him versus Filler. The only thing I want to say about Shaw is not every event is a matchroom event. Not every event goes on the matchroom rankings. I mean, I was at Turning Stone this year and I saw Shaw run out 3 sets from down 8-4, where he ran 4 racks and out, 5 racks and out. He was down 8-4 to Strickland. He was down 8-4 to the guy from Kuwait. He was Yusuf. I mean, he was down, and he just both times he cleaned out, ran out the set, and then in the finals against Fedor, he was down 9-4, going to 13, and boom, he wins 8-9 in a row. I'm watching him break 2-3 balls, popping his cue ball in the middle of the table, and cleaning up 5s. It gets to the point where it seems like he catches a certain gear where when he needs it, and it just runs out set after set. And I don't know, man. I've never seen anyone play offensive 9-ball. I mean, I'm talking Shane, Earl. I've been watching 9-ball my whole life. I've never seen anyone have a higher gear than what Jason does when he's running out these sets. And he goes and runs 714 balls. So I don't think that he's just some pastime, some has-been that's riding a reputation. He's.
Well, I wasn't quite to my point
yet.
Yet.
Carried away.
Yeah, I just wasn't quite to my. I wasn't quite to my point yet.
Okay, thank you.
My overall point is basically these players have profiles. They have reputations. They have things that they've done in the past. that, you give them the benefit of the doubt. So when Jason Shaw makes the Mosconi Cup, it's not because of the way he was playing. It's because of the reputation that he has built. Now, Jason Shaw has, I want to say this in the most respectful possible way, he's got like a huge ego. He's got a huge persona. He's got a huge aura to him that makes him very polarizing in good and bad ways. And I think 2017, 2018, people hated him. And now you're kind of getting to the point where you actually realize Jason Shaw for who he is. And a lot of people who get to meet him do not have a bad word to say about the guy, me included. He is an amazing person and a really, really selfless person. But Joshua Filler's the same exact way. Josh has this huge ego, this huge persona. And I think when you have players that have that kind of persona and that kind of marketability to them, we ignore the dips quite a bit more and we elevate the highs quite a bit more. But what I'm saying, and this was kind of what I was getting to with the Victor thing, is we look at him as an elite player because we can't ignore what he's doing. And I think if he had the same exact personality as a Josh or a Jason, he had that same bolsterous ego. They had the same, look at me, kind of I'm the king now type of mentality to him. I think we would already be putting him into the super elite category because of what he's done in the last year. So we just can't ignore what he's doing.
I don't quite think so, and here's why. So I think what we're talking about, I worked in lending for a long time, right? And there's credit reports. And the way credit reports work is everybody starts out as a ghost. Nobody has a credit score. You have to earn that over time. And so there's a difference between, paying some credit card payments versus paying a car loan on time versus paying a mortgage on time. Those things have different, what your limits are, how big the payments are, and then how long you manage that. Those things matter. The thing about Victor is like, if Victor had just come off and won a world championship, a US Open, and an international 9-ball Open, then we'd be saying, okay, yep, you, Fedor, Filler, great. But he won a EuroTour at a Predator event. And those things are, again, it's like, think about it this way. If Filler, Fedor, Shane, and Shaw, and Albin are like the super elite, well, when it comes to tournaments, the US Open, the International Open, and the World Championship are like the super elites. And then you've got like, the same thing as pool players. We have Clenty Kachi or James Aranis or, these guys that are elite but not super elite. That's the Predator event and the EuroTour. I know, despite what Jim would say if he was here. So it's like, I feel like Victor is elite, not quite super elite, and the tournaments he's won are elite, but they're not super elite. And had he knocked out 3 international Opens, US Opens, and World Championships, then I would say welcome to the super elite club. But I think I don't think that if he had a bigger personality, we'd give him credit. I think that you got to win the big majors.
Well, the only thing I would say to that is, do you know how old Victor is?
Isn't he? No, I don't.
He's 21. He just turned 21 this year, January 11th. So he just turned 21. And the fact that you're naming these titles at age 21, like Joshua Filler, I think he won the US Open before he was 21.
Yeah, and the World Championship. And Clenty, Clenty Kachi was like 19 when he won his tear at the US Open. And then you've got Lucius, but who else? I mean, Fedor, how old was he when he won the World Championship? He couldn't even play at Derby. So listen, I'm not saying if we're going to talk about what Victor's done and isn't amazing, and is he elite?
Fedor's in a different category still. Okay. I think Fedor's different.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is if we're going to talk about is he elite? Yes. Is what he's done, unbelievable? Yes. And do we think that he could become super elite? Like, that's a different conversation. But I think that you can't. We might predict that he becomes super elite. We might look for him to start doing really, really well in the international events. But I'm just saying, nobody gave Shane credit for the World Championship till he won it. I think you got to win it first. And so my whole point is, I still think that Filler is in a different class, and it's not just because of an attitude or a reputation. I think that Filler has demonstrated he's one of the top 9-ball players that's ever lived, and I think Victor may be there soon, but you can't. To answer your question, I'd still bet on Filler if I had to pick today over who's going to win the most over the next 2 years. Yes.
Sure. What do you think, Mike? Who's winning this argument?
It depends on the bet, because you're going to get a lot more odds betting on Victor than you are betting on Josh.
See, if it's even.
No, I mean, you can't argue resumes though. It's different, and you can't argue results like you said. I don't think it's fair to go and put that kid in that same category as amongst the elite Europeans. Do I think he'll get there? I do. I think he's got that kind of ceiling, and I love his consistency over the last 2+ years, going and being in what would have been back-to-back EuroTour finals. Is remarkable.
I don't know if that's ever been done. I'm sure it has been, but
that's extremely difficult, and a super tough tournament, despite the terrible payouts. I'd like to see him on 4-inch pockets under a matchroom stage and see how he handles the bright lights and all eyes on him and see how he goes and feels then. But you can't. I'm with you, Demetrius, in the sense that you can't go and put him in that category unless you have that kind of consistency and you back it up with majors. Like if you're going to trend that way, well, you got to continue to trend that way. You can't trend that way and then go 2 and out in the World 10 ball. You can't trend that way and then be an afterthought in the World 9 ball championships. So while I think he's got that kind of ceiling, he's still young and he still has to go and get there on bigger stages. But
agree. And,
I would love to fire at him. I would, because he's a.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, well, and then
upside
there's something I was talking about. I've mentioned before is like that 2-year thing where when people first burst onto the scene and they realize they can win and they can compete at the highest levels, it's like so exciting and so that everybody has like a 2-year rush. I mean, Filler had a 2-year rush, Federer had a 2-year rush, and if you go back and look, I mean, Darren Appleton had a 2-year rush a long time ago. Mika Immonen had a 2-year rush. Now there was 2 years. I mean, he was Player of the Decade according to Billiards Digest or whatever it was back in like 2000 to 2010. But what happened was after that 2 years was up, Mika is like, borderline elite player. But I mean, now it's like you don't even put him in the same category as like Clenti Kachi although, to be fair, he's making a bit of a comeback and right now he's playing exceptionally well. But I mean,
what do you mean by that?
Who, Mika?
Well, yeah,
Mika. Are you talking about
Mika?
currently or about career?
I'm talking. Okay, so what I'm saying. Okay, let me explain. He won back-to-back U.S. Opens. Well, hang on. Let me make my point. He won back-to-back U.S. Opens. He won a bunch of stuff in between. He was Player of the Year, like 2 years in a row, Player of the Decade, and then he kind of like cooled down. And so the question is, I think that there's a point at which people spike really, really high, and then sometimes they cool down. Sometimes they stay there, and sometimes they stay there. And I think that with Mika, he spiked really, really high, and then he cooled down. And for the next 10, 15 years, it was kind of like not at the same level as those 2 years. Darren Appleton spiked really, really high, and then he cooled down for 10 years, and now he's trying to make a resurgence. And so both Darren and Mika are trying to make a resurgence. Now, when Shane spiked, he stayed there. When Shaw spiked, he stayed there. When Filler spiked, he stayed there.
Nah,
so right now,
when Shaw changed from Michi
Shaw
to Perry, he took a dip when he changed.
He's there. He hasn't cooled down for 10 years either. So the point is Victor is spiking right now. And my whole point is 2 things. One, the level at which he's spiking isn't the same level as what we saw with Filler, Federer, or whatever. But then the other question is, it'll really remain to be seen. It could go one of a couple ways, right? He could go one of 3 ways. He could keep playing the same in years to come. He could get all the way and play as good as anyone in the world, or he could cool down and lose that energy and just not quite get there anymore. And so we don't really know. It's hard to see. It's really hard to see until the cards play out. I'm rooting for him. I believe he can do it. I'm a big fan. I'm just like, that's where we're at, though,
Well, that's why I think this question is interesting. But as far, where did the Eklund come in as far as the Mika part of that?
Well, I was talking about players that have had a super hot 2 years, and then what happened after. I don't understand. You guys are laughing. What do you guys? I mean, do you guys not acknowledge that Mika's level of play dropped substantially after his 2-year streak?
I agree with that. I think putting
Mika
Immonen in the same category as Eklund Kachi. I mean, Eklund hasn't won anything close to what Mika's won. I just think that's a. I mean, if you want to talk Josh and Mika, I think that's a.
But I'm talking about like right now. I was talking about the current level of play. I put Clenti Kachi in the level of play where he's there with like James Aranis. He's there with these guys that are like,
Well, he's 49 years old.
Yeah, I'm not.
I mean, Mika's actually really sneaky old. I mean,
it's not a judgment; it's an observation. I'm not here judging. I
get it. You're right. But no, I agree with that. I think Eklund's probably at this point a better player than Mika, but I don't know, he's 49 years old.
I think they're close. I think Mika's playing really, really well right now, and Clenti hasn't. I think they're. What I was trying to do is I was trying to find an example of like Mika was at the level where he was winning for 2 years. He was considered like super elite, and then he dropped down to like just elite. And again, that's not a criticism. Elite's awesome. There's only room for 4 super elites in the world. So what are you going to do? And that's all I was saying is that a lot of players have hit that super elite level for 2 years and then cooled down. And Mika's not alone in that, man. In fact, it's a really interesting thing when you see guys like Fedor, who's had a huge 2 years. It'll be interesting to see what happens after. That's all. It's hard to get to the top. It's harder to stay there.
Mike, what you think?
No, I mean both are accurate statements. I think it's a little bit unfair to go and judge the kid based off of that standard, because it wasn't like he opened up a box and there was Josh Filler snapping off everything. Like, there was progression in his career too, just like anyone else's. Jason took strides, Shane, took strides in his career, and everybody did. I like the kid and the direction that he's going in, but he's not there yet. And I don't think it's fair to go and compare him to those guys.
Well, that's a great point. When people do this, it happens all the time. Like, for example, if there's a young up and comer, people are like, man, he's really good for 15, and they're comparing him to other 15-year-olds. And then when he's winning at the regional level, like, man, this guy's a hell of a player. He has, he might be able to go play with higher level players. You get to a certain level, and all of a sudden people start comparing you to perfection. And all they can see are like, well, he's not perfect. He's not perfect. And all of a sudden it can sound really critical and judgmental. The only reason we're doing this is because Nate was literally like, hey, let's compare him to Josh Filler, who's like the hottest 9-ball player in the world. And I'm like, yeah, not there yet. But
I still think Albin. I still think Albin.
Well, you know what I mean. I just, yeah. Well, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough.
I think this is exactly what I like. First off, I'll get back to the Victor thing because I do want to talk about. But I think that Albin is another perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. I think Albin is not only the best 9-ball player in the world right now, I think he's kind of in a category of his own. I mean, what hasn't he won from Matchroom in the last 3 years? I mean, he's winning everything. And the matches that he's in, the tournaments that he's not winning, like, it takes Herculean efforts to beat him. If you look at, like, Shane's got him now twice, both in the World Pool Championships as well as the US Open last year. People forget Shane broke and ran 8 racks on him last year at the US Open to knock him out of that tournament. Like, that's what it takes to beat Albin Ocean. You have to basically run out from everywhere. Shane broke and ran like 7 of 8 racks this year. Like, the guy, and if you don't do that, like, if you make it about endurance and you make it about like just getting out of racks, like, Albin's probably going to win. Like, Albin is, but he doesn't have that really loud, boisterous like personality that Josh and Jason have. And I think that just because of that with Albin, I think he loses some of the hype that he should rightfully get, just because he's not going to do those things like Jason or Joshua will, and like things like the Mosconi Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I felt like Shane, when he was playing at the finals of the World Championship, I said it felt to me like Shane was an underdog. Albin never missed a ball in that set, unless you want to count the back-to-back jump shots after a push out. But, I mean, really, I watched Albin play sets where he wouldn't miss a ball, where he gets out every time, where he extracts the maximum out of every situation. I felt that when he played Shane ran, from 6-5 down. Shane kind of controlled the set all the way to the finish line. And I felt like that's exactly what Shane had to do, because, and I honestly, I feel like Albin was like kind of just breaking a little bit off that set. And had he generated, like, I was surprised that Albin didn't hit Shane. Like, Shane ended up hitting him first with the big package, but Albin had a couple of breaks, and I just felt like Shane was lucky that Albin didn't come with like 3, 4, 5 racks a couple times in that set. Like, Shane just happened to get there first, but I felt like Shane was an underdog. And how often do you feel that Shane is an underdog playing a set of 9-ball? I mean, like, not just like he doesn't have to win, but like, really, I don't know if Shane can win. You know what I mean? That's how Albin makes you feel sometimes.
Well, that's why I think that the quieter players who just kind of put their head down and play, and Albin is that. I mean, he has a massive profile because you can't ignore him, because he's won almost every single 9-ball event that there is to win, besides the US Open, right? He won the International Open. He's won the World Pool Championships twice. He's won the Premier League. No, he hasn't won the Masters. So I guess the Masters he could end up winning. But my point is he's won already a huge chunk of everything that you can win in 9-ball pool. And we still look at Joshua Filler and, you know, Jason Shaw and even Shane to a lesser degree before we look at Albin. I think he's an afterthought in a lot of discussions, and I don't think I
Well,
I just don't.
I think that I don't know about that. I mean, I think look back at like when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was Earl, Efren, Nick Varner, Mike Siegel, Buddy Hall. You know, I mean, Earl was obviously over the top, and Mike Siegel was very, very loud and you know, whatever. But Nick Varner was just this mild mannered, real soft spoken guy. And same with, I mean, Efren. Efren was just, you know, but yet they played good enough and they played, you know, so well that, I mean, they let their stick do the talking. I think pool's a game where you can let your stick do the talking, and just because Albin doesn't have the same branding or PR that, you know, that a Shaw does. I mean, you know him, I know him, Mike knows him. So like, who are the people that we think don't understand how amazing Albin's been doing the last 2 years and how dominant of a tournament player he is? I don't know, man. I guess there might be people. It might be right. You know, maybe Matchroom features more interviews with Shaw, or maybe they do more of the Mosconi Cup stuff where they're featuring, you know, the outspoken Filler or something like that. But I just think that for the people that really follow the game, I mean, you're right. I mean, Albin's been the most dominant tournament player in the world right now, and yeah.
Well, I think I mean, going back to where this started from, I think that actually hurts Victor. I mean, you're correct. You're correct in saying that he obviously does not have the resume that Josh Filler has, and maybe he doesn't even have the same resume that Josh Filler had by the time he was 21. I think I would agree with that too. But the premise of my discussion is ignore everything that's ever happened from today forward. Who's going to have the better career? And I don't know that it's Josh Filler. I mean, from the person that I see in Victor Zielinski, even if I know that Victor Zielinski's still improving. Do we know that Josh is still improving? Now, Josh is maintaining at a level that's basically almost unreached of anybody in the history of pool when you look at all games. But do we know for a fact that Josh is going to have a better career going forward? And I think the fact, for me at least, I don't know that it's true, and that's a testament to Victor, not to Josh.
Well, that's because it's the future. We can't see in the future. I mean, Victor might outplay him from here, and Filler might dip. So we were just talking about it. We gave our opinions. But the one thing about as far as attitude goes, I just wanted to give an example of a player who's not a Jason Shaw or Josh Filler type personality. Look at Fedor. I mean, he's mild mannered, real quiet, soft spoken. But what did he do? He won a world championship. The guy, you know, wins 2 derby events. I mean, the guy does everything so well, and he achieved at a level to where everybody noticed him, whether or not he called it. He didn't have to call attention to himself. His results called attention.
He just barks respectfully. That's the difference.
He does, actually.
Yeah.
He's actually super goofy too.
Yeah, but you know what? I wouldn't have known who Fedor was had he not had the results he had. And once he had the results he had, I wouldn't have even heard his barking had he not done what he did. That's all I'm saying. I think that I don't know that you need to have a big. I think that pool's a performance game, and if you perform well enough, you get attention.
Well, doesn't that kind of go to my overall point as far as like the bolsterousness and the ego of Josh and Jason, that they get a little extra attention than maybe they deserve over their peers just because they are in the limelight all the time with the Mosconi Cup and stuff like that. I mean, that kind of prove my point?
I'll tell you what I think. I think that if anything, I know that's fair. You know, maybe, and again, it's hard because I'm not the target audience, right? Because I pay attention to different things than maybe some mainstream people might. I don't know, but I would think that you could say, is it their personalities or is it their style of play? And I would actually think, Nate, that people I like and admire, and the people that play with extreme confidence and extreme aggression. And when you look at, if you had to pick who are the most aggressive and confident shot makers, I mean, Filler and Shaw are very, very aggressive and confident and exceptional pocketing. And I think people like that. And so they like these guys that are like Superman, that are just like, look at them just run over the table. And so I think that when you look at guys like J.L. Chang, there's another guy that, you know, or Albin, they play more of a game management. Of course, Albin didn't miss a ball, so obviously he pockets well. But when you look at guys like Ralph Souquet, I would think that I've always felt that guys like Ralph Souquet, J.L. Chang, they don't get the respect and credit that they deserve. Or even David Alcady falls into that, like, because they're so easily overshadowed by, look at that shot, look at how good he shoots, look at how amazing look at how fast he shoots. I think fast, aggressive players attract more attention. And I don't
But
know
if
if
you're gonna play reserve, then you got to have results, and that's what Albin has. Albin has results because you don't see Albin go and take the flyers like a Josh or a Jason. You don't see him go and make very many mistakes as far as decision making either. You know, I think that like in tennis, for example, the field matters, right? You have Nadal on clay and you have Federer on grass. You know, Albin is great playing world championships. Shane is great playing U.S. Opens. Victor may be great. Huh?
Novak Djokovic in hotel rooms.
Nobody cared about Novak. Anyway,
that was a good Australian Open joke at least.
But you know, it's like the games matter, the conditions matter. You know, Euro tours are really generous pockets and kind of a goofy format in a sense with 3-point rule, and you're racking for your. I know they used to rack for their opponent. I don't know if they still do, but my point is that Victor does well on those conditions. You know, does he do well on a matchroom stage? It remains to be seen. And unfortunately, that's the highest standard in the industry right now. You got to perform when the bright lights are on you. So some of those guys like Jason and Filler and Shane and those guys can go and perform and they can adapt, they can play well, and they can be favorites under any conditions. Would you put Victor on as a betting favorite coming up to the UK Open? I wouldn't, but I would love to go on fire at it because he's got that kind of upside. You know?
Yeah, it would be fun to see. I look forward to it, Nate. We're all in agreement. We're all big fans of Victor. We're all rooting him on, and I expect him to do. I mean, listen, I expect him to do really, really well. If you would ask me this, if you'd ask me this question, do I think that this is the highlight of Victor's career, or do I think that he's going to go on and take his place on the international stage when it comes to the highest, events with Matchroom? I would bet that he does. Like I would, if I had to pick whether or not he makes it to the next level or to the highest level, I would bet that he does. By the way, that's a bet that I would usually bet against. Not because I root against anybody, but just statistically, only a couple of guys can get there. So it's like I hate to be cynical, but if you're going to ask me, like, suppose, like for example, you told me that there's some 16-year-old and such country that's playing really, really good and making deep runs in the EuroTour, and he's going to be the next greatest thing, without even knowing anything about him, I'd be like, well, he's not going to be a Filler or a Federer. Not because I know anything about him, just because if I have to bet, probably unlikely, just because of how hard it is and how few spots there are. But when it comes to Victor, he's one of the few guys I'd say, yeah, I think he's going to go all the way with this game. But so yeah, I think he will. But the question was It was a comparison to Filler, and maybe it would be better to say, do we think he's going to break through to the highest levels? And I think so.
Yep. We needed Jim for this discussion, so he could have just talked about his locks for everything. And I like to pick dark horses when I pick my favorite players, and Oliver Solnacki, Aloysius Yep, and Victor Zielinski and Wojtek Szewczak. Those are my dark horses that are going to be great.
You have
players.
Like 18 players in your stable, homie. I mean,
not just those 4. Stop it. It's just those 4, and it's always been just those 4. As much crap as Jim is the one that has like everybody who wins a tournament is, I guess he's in my stable now. Sweet.
Yeah,
how can I be wrong?
Nostradamus over there.
He just goes right off the top 10 Fargo list. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Yeah.
And he's gambling, he says.
No, he doesn't go off the top 10 Fargo list. He goes off the top 10 or the top 4 of every single tournament. That's just who he goes off of. Whoever takes top 4, he just says, all right, those are my players now.
It wouldn't surprise me if Jim started calling who's going to win the last 3 tournaments. Instead of trying to predict, he'll just be like, I bet you I can tell you who won. Anyway, we love you, Jim.
Yeah, we do. We also like to bust you up, so that's always good. All right, let's I don't know. I guess is there anything we want to talk about for the Euro Tour? I guess I don't really have all that much that I'm.
Who's FSR? Eric Croft said, "How about FSR?"
Francisco Sanchez Ruiz. Is my guess. That's usually Francisco Sanchez Ruiz. So I honestly I see him and Victor in kind of like the same category as like just players that get overlooked that are really, really awesome players. But I'll also give a huge shout out to Anna Gradiznik, who wins the female side of it, because I think we should promote the women's pool as well. Sarah Roca gets second. Kristina Zlateva gets third. She's a loyal. I don't know. I guess she's been on the podcast a couple times and did a lot of the events, so I have an affinity for her. I guess other than that, let's move on to the Masters. That could be fun. What do we think of the Masters? The draw is out. Any thoughts, Demetrius? Or have you seen them?
I have not seen the. I think I looked at it, but I don't remember. Where is it? Is it on Matchroom? I could pull it up right now.
Yeah, it should be out there. So we have Eklund Kachi versus Dennis Arcoyo. I'm really glad to see Dennis is back in there. I think it's almost criminal not to have him at least invited to this event every single year. The winner of that will play Alexander Kazakis. Actually, I'm just going to do this and pull it up because this is a lot easier. So here we go. We will pull it up and put it on stream. Actually, first off, before we even get to that, how great does this look? I think this is... How tough does that look? That just looks brutal. All right, here's the draw. We have Eklund Kachi and Arcoyo playing to get to Alexander Kazakis, Oliver Solnaki versus Sky Woodward to get to Joshua Filler, Omar Al-Shaheen, and Jungo playing to get to Max Leshner. The Coe brothers get to draw each other. How much fun is that? That reminds me of like Sky Woodward and Billy Thorpe drawing each other a couple of years ago. Playing to get to Al-Qaeda, Francisco Sanchez Ruiz, Chang Yulong to get to Albin, Mieszko Fortunsky versus Jason Shaw to get to Aloysius Yap, Abdullah I really need to get better at saying this guy's name, Al-Yosef, and Niels Fine to get to Nayuki Oi, Loho Sum, and Dennis Graba to get to Shane. What do we think of the intro matches, Mike?
I think it's gambling race to 7 with a lot of these guys. I think even if you have some names on paper that may be favorites, like for example, like Shaw and Fortunsky, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he got there in Mitsuko, despite the fact that Jason's playing out of his head right now. It's 9-ball and it's winter break. I think the addition of Mika and Mario He is huge, and I think both of them can go and cause some waves with the guys that they're replacing.
Oh yeah, duh. I forgot this is where's Mario He is replacing who?
Mario is replacing Al Shaheen, I believe.
Omar Al Shaheen.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure that Mika is replacing Loho Sum, right?
No, Yulong Chang.
Oh, Yulong Chang. Okay. So I forgot about those. Do you think they'd update these? But
well, I mean, Ruiz is coming off
a previous article too. This is a previous article too. So
Ruiz, winning Derby, and Mika, dominating Shane the way that he did for the first, 3/4 of their match. I wouldn't be surprised if he gave Albin hell. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them give Albin hell, just given the format and having that one match under their belt, to go and get a little bit of momentum. But I can say that with a lot of guys. I don't think that's necessarily soft on either side. Because Grabe, you can look at Shane, but Dennis Grabe can play great 9-ball. So,
sure.
Yeah,
and I mean,
yeah, exactly. So I don't know, man. It's going to be a great event.
Yeah, I think that this one's super. I mean, yeah, raised to 7 with elite players. Winter break.
Almost a little silly, isn't it?
It kind of
the pockets help.
Yeah, that does help. But so that's a big deal. I think that the one thing it has going for it to make it so it's not totally coin flips is the pressure is so intense that the people that handle pressure really well, like Albin, things like that, it makes it so it's not like a normal race to 7. Like if they played some race to 7 in the early rounds of Derby, it might be different than a race to 7 under the Matchroom lights. The set's going to play a little bit longer. And so I think that Albin, will do well. I think that Filler, for the same reason, if you look at his top half of the bracket, like if you had to just go clinically and say which, like of the players that are probably the favorites, right? Filler, Albin, maybe Shaw or Shane. Like if you had to pick 4 names, but then you look at like who else is in their group of 16, like Filler might have technically a slighter pull in his group of than Shane and Ocean and Shaw on the lower half. But it's like I've heard that if you flip a coin, tails like a penny, like tails is supposed to come up like a little bit, like 50.5%. But it's like that's the kind of pull that we're talking about because it's so tough right here. But if I had to pick a name, like I would think that Filler coming off a EuroTour win, being in that top half of the bracket, I think Filler making the finals. What do you think the chances are that Filler makes the finals? It's not 1 in 8, which is what it would be if it was straight 50-50. I think he's
I'll
he's
tell you what.
35% to make the finals.
I don't think he likes his draw. I mean, this is coming out of nowhere, but I don't think he wants to see Sky Woodward in that first match.
Oh, is that who he's playing? I'm so confused. Can you?
Well, if Oliver Solnacki beats Sky Woodward, if Sky Woodward beats Oliver Solnacki, he'll be playing Joshua Filler in the second round. I mean, I know Josh isn't afraid of anybody, but I'm sure he doesn't want to be seeing Josh Filler with all the Mosconi Cup stuff that happens. I mean,
Sky's had his number.
Sky's had his number. He has. And
then
Sky,
again, maybe that makes him motivated. Maybe that makes Filler motivated.
Maybe. But I don't know. It's possible he doesn't really care and he'll play anybody. You know, that's kind of his mentality. But if there's one person that I would say might be able to beat him in a first round upset of this entire field, it's Sky Woodward, and he's right there.
Yeah.
Or I should see the most likely person, I should say. I mean,
well, I think Filler's the most. If I had to pick a name who I thought was like the most likely to reach the finals, I would pick Filler, and then probably Alvin next. Yeah.
Mike, what do you think?
I mean, I can make arguments for 90% of this list on why they're going to go and beat, this person or that person.
I want to know who that 10% is. Come on, put some names behind him, Mike.
I mean, I would have liked to see Victor get in myself.
Me too.
Into this event, but I'm not upset at seeing Miko or Mario get in. I'll say like that. There's just other names on there that I would have thought maybe he can go and replace. But yeah, I don't. I mean, just looking at it, everyone's tough. I guess you gotta like. If I gotta like somebody, I guess Albin. I like Albin's chances better over Mika Ruiz compared to like Yap over a Shaw or Oy over Niels or Shane over. Well, I guess Shane over Dennis Grave. But I agree with you 100% when it comes to that Sky assessment. I said that the other day. I don't think he wants no part of seeing Sky in that second round just because of a numbers game and having it for the last few years in the Mosconi Cup. Sky does not get rattled by a name or by a persona or by being over the top. He just goes and plays elite. You could argue maybe coming off a EuroTour win and playing on those buckets compared to jumping over to 4-inch pockets could be a tougher transition for some of these guys. So
these are 3 and 7/8, right?
Yeah. Well, if it's not 4, then it's right there. Yeah,
I think it's 3 and 7/8. That's what it was last year, and they said that was going to be. I mean, this was a long time
I love
ago,
that. I want to see guys go and show. It wasn't until the end of the event where I really saw guys go and get comfortable, because even outs that were elementary were not automatic, and that's what I really loved about tightening them up like this. I know one guy who can play on any kind of conditions anywhere in the world, and that's Dennis. But we ain't seen Dennis go and play on a diamond table or a Rasson table in over 6 months. But if Dennis was in full USA gear on playing on tight equipment, the way that he pockets balls, there's not very many guys that I would go and put above him. But
I actually agree with that, because like you want to talk about like the Sky Woodward part of this. Who else would Filler want to face less than Dennis or Koyo in the quarterfinals too?
You know what? I got a question. So this was actually Mike Page just made a video maybe a week or two ago. So it's Fargo Billiards. Fargo Raid. If you look up Fargo Raid on YouTube, and this is the most recent video they've made. And the question was, do tighter pockets favor the better shot maker? Now, hang on. This sounds obvious. Well, hang on. What we're not talking about is we're not talking about one guy who's an 800 Fargo rate who shoots better than a guy who's a 700 Fargo rate. Obviously, tighter pockets are going to favor the better shot maker. What we're talking about is if you have two 800s and one 800 is a really, really sharp shooter, and that's one of his strengths, but maybe his safety game or his break isn't quite as strong. And then you've got another 800 who doesn't necessarily shoot as well as the other guy, but moves good, plays good saves, plays great patterns, plays good cue ball. has a good mental game. Does
Wojtek Szczesny.
tightening up if they're both 800s, does tightening up the pockets shift it so where the 800 that relies on shot making has an advantage? Or is it going to balance, because then the guy who plays good cue ball and game management is going to benefit from having less difficult shots? Like, there was an interesting video on this. I'll spare you. There was a thread on AZ Billiards, a lot of discussion, but in the end of the day, what it came out to was two 800s are going to perform equally well regardless of the difficulty of the pockets, because they both have strengths, and as long as they're similar level, those strengths will be offset by the time they get to. Now the break is different. If one guy has a really, really big break, tightening up the pockets tips it so that the guy with the big break isn't as competitive, because the break means less and less as the pockets get tight. But all those other skills still matter. So the point is that tightening up the pockets, my first instinct would be, hey, that's going to help Sean and Josh Filler and maybe Dennis. But after watching that video and thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. But some of these other guys do a lot of things that are going to, if a guy like Max Lecter comes around and breaks really well and has less difficult layouts and less short side shape and less demands on what he has to do to run the balls out, that's going to take pressure off his shot making too. So it should be a pretty close match, man.
I think about like the style of hitting the ball in the hole. And when I think about a tight table, would you rather go for like a Ralph style or a Mika style? Because for my money, I would rather go with the Ralph style of making sure that ball gets in the hole versus a Mika.
Are you saying that because Ralph has won 8, Whirlpool Masters? Are you trying to say that there's?
I didn't know that's
this?
that. Hell no, that's not why
way
I'm
to
saying
go,
it.
Jim. Way to go, Jim.
Yeah, no. I'm just like,
Ralph has won, I think he's won 7 or 8 of them.
Even like an Omar. Omar's got this, I'm gonna go and shotgun the ball in the hole kind of way of hitting it. And I think on 4-inch pockets, it can really go and expose you very easily. And especially if you can get in your own head even easier, I think it'll go and rattle you that much quicker. So for me, that makes a huge difference. And the tighter table will definitely go and change your decision making, where you may go for a shot, let's say in a US Open on 4.5 versus a Masters. I think you'll think twice.
Ralph
so then maybe
6,
that favors.
and he's been in the finals of 8.
Now we're just off of here, but I don't even know that's that. I'm just saying.
Well, I can't wait, man. This is going to be a fun one, and I look forward. This is one I'm definitely going to tune into. I look forward to this one.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right, so I guess let's do some predictions because those are fun. Pick your obvious player and your dark horse winner. Go ahead, Mike.
My obvious player will be Shane.
Can you throw it back on the? Can we see the whole list again? I know that a couple of them are outdated, but throw it up there again. Okay, your obvious player is Shane. Mike, who else?
Yeah, my obvious player is Shane, because I think if he can get past that first matchup, I really like him in the next one, unless it's Niels, because Niels is a huge wild card on this event because of his experience. If I'm going complete dark horse, if I'm going complete dark horse here, I'm gonna go and double down, and I'm gonna say Sky Woodward's gonna be a Whirlpool master, because if he can go and fade those first couple of matchups, which I know is far from a gimme, because Oliver is a monster in the making, similar to Victor. We obviously know who Josh is, and then if you end up facing, pick your poison there with those guys up top, Kachi Okolo or Kazakis. I think he'll be battle tested, and I would like him from there, especially on the round underneath. So that would be who I'd go with. 2 Americans.
Well, I just think that calling any of these players dark horses is kind of silly. But I think that for my obvious pick, I'll just go Filler. Maybe Ocean. I'm torn. Hang on. Let me start with my dark horse. If you want to call Oi a dark horse, I'll take Oi. Here's what I like about him: is he's starting, one round in, which helps. He's been really, really, really doing well. He hasn't quite popped off anything major, but he's been really showing up deep, deep, deep in a lot of these events. Didn't he make a good run at the World Championship as well? I thought he did, and so I feel like Oi would be my dark horse pick, and then, gosh, man, it's so hard not to say Albin. I'm torn between Albin and Filler. I'll go filler. I'll just go filler. I think, you know what? He takes second at Derby. He just won this EuroTour. I think he's hungry. You know, this is an elite competition. I think he's a competitor. I'll just go ahead and pick filler.
I mean, okay. If there's two players that I would honestly feel like I'm pretty comfortable in saying that they have, this is going to sound maybe disrespectful, but almost zero chance of winning, I would say Naoki Oi and I would say Dennis Graba, and it has nothing to do necessarily with their ability to win. It's just their mechanics. They're not the tightest. They're not the tightest with their mechanics. And when you're throwing somebody on, and I guess that's predicated off whether these are 3 7/8 or whether they're 4-inch pockets. I was under the impression they're going to be 3 7/8 because I thought Emily decided that last year that's just what this tournament's going to be. I'm seeing a couple of the other things around here that's saying it is 4-inch. So if that's the case and it's 4 inches, then, maybe I certainly do not feel quite as confident by saying this, but if you're talking about just straight mechanics and always getting that ball into a tiny hole, Naoki Oi and Dennis Graba, I just feel like that could easily break down a lot easier. I guess going back to my dark horse, does Dennis Arcoyo does that count as a dark horse? Since
I don't think so, man. I don't think so.
We've been like away from Dennis for long enough now since he's been kicked out of the U.S. that
the guy's it's been to pick 5 9-ball players in the world. He's one of the top. He's been one of the top 5. I don't think that's a dark horse. I mean, none of these guys are dark horses, but at least if you
the
go
last
with
time we seen him in a major, he was in a final against Alban Ocean at the International.
Yeah, at least if you pick like Lechner or something, I guess you can call Lechner a dark horse or Sky a dark horse, or I mean, it's even hard to call Niels a dark horse, but I guess you could say Niels would be a dark horse only because you've got other players to choose from. But I mean, all these guys, I mean, Coping,
Well, then I'll do this. I'm gonna actually take Arcoyo as my lock then, or my obvious.
Oh, that's like you're like the guy that asked for the wild 7 ball, and then when I said no. Then you're like, okay, well, I'll just play you even. You were ready you wanted to see if you could sneak him in and steal the money as a dark horse.
I do, because I honestly think that, like, I feel like he's going to be prepared. I have to assume he's going to be prepared coming into this, and I don't hate his draw. I mean, of course, he's got to play against Kachi, who just
Kachi was just in a final of a EuroTour. How can you not hate his draw? And then he's got Kazakis, who just won the damn event after that.
We don't even know if Kachi's going to show up for his match or if he's going to sleep in. So I like that. I'm just saying, I think Kachi's a good matchup for Arcoyo. Or Arcoyo's, yeah. So I like Arcoyo on that. And, of the top 8 players, of course, Alex Kazakis won this last year. But are you going to take Kazakis over? How many of those other 7 players are you taking Kazakis over? Maybe 1 or 2 of them. I mean, I get the idea of that. I don't know that Filler's going to make it out there if he has to play against Woodward. So I could see Dennis playing, let's say, Sky Woodward in the quarterfinals, and then I don't know. Is any of those players, Mario He, Jungo, Koping Yi, Koping Chung, Al-Qaidi, Lechner, are you going to take any of those players theoretically over Dennis in a race? Of course, it's a race to 7, whatever. But I could see Dennis getting to the. I could see a very real path.
Y'all can message me.
Yeah.
I would.
Maybe if we get to that point, maybe I'll have to message you. But I could see Dennis getting to the finals of this, and then he's just got to win 1 match against whoever comes out of the bottom side. I'm creating a narrative, but whatever. I'm going to go with it. I think Dennis is my lock. And my dark horse, well, I'll just blow it all up and say that, no, you know what? I'm going to say my dark horse is Mika, because Mika, I think, is playing good. And I don't know. I think it'd be great to see Mika Immonen make it out to the finals and potentially win his 2nd. I think that'd be fun at age 49. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So there you go. What do we think, guys?
Yeah, I should have been more strategic. I picked a guy from both sides of the bracket. I would have been better off picking 2 guys in the same bracket, because then if they end up playing each other, okay, I push somebody, and anyway, I have more board coverage, as they say in poker. You got to get in there with the low suited connectors to have board coverage. Otherwise, you pick up. Never mind. Okay, I give up. I dogged it, but that's fine. I'll go down with the ship.
Do you want to talk about your feelings?
It's too late. I'm dead inside, Nate.
Good for you. I'll be there, and just give me a little time. Pool's dragging it out of me. Mike, what you think? Anything else?
No, I think it's time. I think it's time, boys.
I'm good, man.
I agree. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And I don't know. One more prediction. One word question. Big Co, Little Co. Who's winning the battle of the Co brothers? Demetrius.
Little Cole.
Big Co.
I say Big Co too. All right. There you go. We ended on that.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.